Okay, this video is one on my latest commission, which is a customer's giving me all these drawers, and I'm going to make a big unit out of them. Okay, this project's a little bit different, so I've got lots of drawers that the customer's been collecting for a long time. It's possibly my hardest customer, who's my mum. And what I'm going to do is try and make a unit that fits inside an alcove. She sent me a plan, which I'm going to loosely follow. She's done lots of different photos and prints there of it. I'm going to use solid pine board, and I've got some pine here which I'm going to plane up. I'm going to probably rebate it all together and make kind of a higgledy-piggledy, kind of lots of shelves. It's probably quite a weighty unit, so I'm just not sure quite how I'm going to do it just yet. So what I'm going to do is set out these drawers, work out the heights, and then I can figure out where some of these shelves are going to go, so I can start machining up the timber and putting the grooves in, rebates or dados, wherever you want to call them or where you're from, and try and figure out how I can make this look kind of somewhere near what it should. Okay, let's get started. Okay, I've done a bit of maths and working out where things are going to go. So I'm going to rip two of these boards now down to the width I want how deep the alcove to be. And I'm going to put the rebates on the back so it can accept a piece of ply when I get round to that. And then I've also worked out then where I'm going to dado for the shelves that go right the way across. So we can get some of these dados in. I've got an 18mm cutter. I'm going to use that in my guide rail on the router and push across. So we can work out where the full ones are going across. Then we can take it apart and have a look at where we're going to do the half ones and start to break it all up and down then and go from there. Okay, I've cut the four pieces to form the carcass, the two sides, the top and the bottom. Now what I'm going to do is use a rebated cutter with a bearing guided one. Just form a rebate across the back to take a piece of plywood. I'm going to do it for a 6mm ply, try and keep the weight down a little bit. It's going to be quite a heavy unit as it is. If I was doing this as a freestanding unit, I'd probably set that back in a bit more so that you could scribe and things like that. But there's no need for this as it's freestanding, so go against the back of the unit fine. Okay, so what I've done is I've broken down the boards into smaller pieces now. So I've got the outside, but I've also cut down some of the shelves just to get rid of the boards and make them a bit easier to move around my little workshop. So what I'm going to do now is groove the wood to accept the shelves. So I've allowed 6mm depth. So I'm going to cut it with a 18mm router cutter with the fence and the sled, which I'll show you in a minute. And what I've done is to mark this out. So I've made myself a little story rod, so it's got one of the offcuts. And I've marked along it all where the rebates have to be, the dados. And what I've done is the ones where it's going to be a universal on both of them, I've laid them together and I'll draw the line right across so that I know that they'll match up. In an ideal world, I'd actually route them together, probably clamp them up and route them across. My workshop's not big enough for that, so I'm going to route them individually, but marking them up, at least then I'll know their match and won't have one that's kind of offset to the other. You won't get accumulation of errors with your tape measure and stuff. So I'm going to set those out now and then get the router set up ready to route some across. And then there'll also be some that don't go onto both pieces, so I'll separate them up then and I can figure out what's going where for different ones. Okay, you can see I've just trenched out a test piece on a bit of scrap to see if it works. And what I do is I set it to a 2mm packer just to keep it away from my guide rail, so I can set it quite easily. It's got these two bits that run in the groove. Not the groove, the bumps of the guide rail. And then we've got the 18mm cutter there, dust extraction on. And dead easy to set the depth for this, so set it down so it's flush on the ground. And then just lift up the gauge to 6mm. And I was thinking I was going to have to clamp a piece of scrap either side to stop breakout. But it's a brand new router bit and it's cut it really clean. So I'm going to keep going with this for a little bit. And then decide if I need to add a bit of like a sacrificial strip or something to do the rest of the grooves. Such a perfect wall. What can anybody see? grooved all them out. There are other ways of doing it. So you could use one of these type of guide rail clamps, which I used to use all the time. They're quite good. So you can clamp that on, and it just cams on like that. Measure your offset to your router cutter and do it like that. Or even more low tech, if you wanted, you could just go with a level or a piece of straight timber, clamp it on, measure your offset, and just route across your groove. If you've got a table saw with a dado head, it's probably an easy way of doing it, but it's not something that's very often done in the UK. But this seems to, the way I do it with the guide rail seems to do it really quite accurately. So I'm quite pleased with this. So the next stage now is to start looking at the other grooves I've got to put in the vertical kind of dividers now. Okay, I took the decision that as it's going to be literally in an alcove, you're not going to see the sides. I'm going to use some mechanical fixings to help hold this together as I'm building it, which means I can do a bit of a dry assembly and I've got the kind of vertical shelves in. So what I'm going to do now is set the drawers out and then work out where the horizontal partitions will go, and then I can mark them up for the other grooves and start getting them done as well. Okay, so I've put all the drawers in. Obviously there's going to be lots of partitions yet, which I haven't put in because I need the vertical partitions in first and the grooves in those. But it's all looking pretty tidy. Everything seems to line up at the moment. So if I get this marked up now, I can get grooving the rest of it, and then I can get cutting what the last of the timber that I need for it, and maybe make a back for it as well. Because there's so many bits to this unit, what I've actually done is drawn a little plan of it. If I was a better man, I'd probably do it on the computer and I could show you all in 3D. But just so I can label all the bits, make sure I've got them. So I've got all the full cross ones there, then the verticals, and then 8 of the smaller ones there. So I'm just going to make sure I've got all them, can cut them, and then groove them up to suit. Okay, so I've got all the drawers in place now. I've still got to make a few dividers and infills down here. And I'm not sure about these. Obviously there'll be a back on it, but I don't think they need to go quite as deep. So maybe I'll put some panels in there to try and kind of lessen the depth of those. But it's looking all right. One that I didn't really account for, and I'm having to do now, is kind of fettle the drawers a little bit. 'Cause some of them have been plain to fit in whatever they had before. So actually, although I've measured it, and I assume they were square, they're not really very square. So I'm going to kind of alter and adjust some of these planes and plane them down. I've actually been doing that already, as you can see by the kind of mahogany dust here off this little unit to get that to fit in. And then I'm going to take it all apart then, sand all the pieces, put it back together, glue it up as I go. Then I can sand up the face of it and get all these little infills sorted and done. And we're nearly there.
Such a peaceful world. It is just the way you are. This is your last chance before you jump into my car. I'm gonna drown you in the river. I'm gonna fix your clothes. Smile. I'm gonna knock you out and over, 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 over. You know it's over, it's over, it's over. I'm gonna drown you in the river. I'm gonna fix your clothes. Smile. I'm gonna bring you down and over, 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 over. You know it's over, it's over, it's over. What keeps you alive? 'Cause I wanna see your face again. Wanna see your...
Okay, the glue's gone off. I didn't use many clamps. Obviously, I've screwed some of the main cross pieces anyway, so that kind of kept it tight. Whereas a few pieces where I wanted to keep it a little bit tighter. One thing I should say, you might not have noticed on the video, is when you do something like this and you're knocking them through and you're cleaning up the glue, make sure you go around the back and clean the glue up as well, because otherwise it looks like a pigeon's had a bit of a dirty protest down there. So take the clamps off, and now what I've got to do, I've got a few more kind of uprights and then some little infills to add in, and then I need to start fettling the drawers to try and make them fit. I've not done them the tightest fit ever, just because they're all kind of over the shop, but I need to just do a few alterations and then to the drawers, and then get ready to fit it out. Now, I was trained as a site carpenter, so I pretty much always favour a tape measure for making measurements. But actually, doing something like this, I do tend to use a folding rule, which means I can get a much more accurate measurement then. Okay, on the back of the unit, I'm just going to use some real simple kind of just blocks of wood glued down as stops to stop the drawer pushing back too far. Obviously, I could have saved a bit of weight when I was making this. A few places I could have, kept these things shorter, but as this isn't going to be moved once it's installed, it's not really that important. I can put some stops. Okay, and then the last thing, I'm going to cut a back for it. I've got some 4mm ply here. As I rebaited it 6mm, so it should sit in a tiny little bit. And I'm just gonna pin it on. The stops for the drawers, I just use a little bit of glue and literally just do like a little rub joint. So just put the glue on, rub it back and forth, and it kind of bonds nicely there. I've just left them to go off. In this heat, it's probably gone off already. And then I'm just going to do a little bit of sanding and filling. There's not much to do really. The customer's going to paint it, so I don't have to touch it, which is good. Because I don't like painting stuff very much. And I've got to just do a little bit at the bottom, just to infill that bit of there.
On a backseat in a real human mirror keeps you alive. So wanna see your face again. Wanna see you on a backseat in a real human.
Okay, that's it finished for me now. I'm pretty much finished on this, just a little bit of sanding left to do. I've really enjoyed making this project. It's been something a little bit different, a little bit quirky. It's been interesting working with the old drawers and trying to get them to fit right and, fettling them to get in there. The only difficulty with this project really has been the sheer number of components. There's been so many bits and pieces to it, and making sure that they all line up and keep level and square with each other. If I was going to do this again, I'd probably recommend to use some plywood for the main carcass rather than this pine lamb beam. Pine lamb sheets. The pine lamb's great, comes in the big kind of 8 foot long by 600 sheets, and but it does have a habit of really cupping across its width. So you have to keep it flat and keep some weight on it, and it's pointless for me to try and store any kind of spare that's left over. As you can tell, I've got the fan on now to try and keep the workshop cool. It just gets quite warm in here. So I'm hopeful to get this off this weekend, and then they can get a coat of paint on this fairly soon. So I'm thinking they'll probably paint all the outside stuff and then maybe stain the internals with some Osmo kind of wax oil stuff. But yeah, it's been a fun project. I've enjoyed this one. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this, please click like and subscribe. Thank you.
No, doing your tools. It's tea time.
Okay, coming now.